And you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we held at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watch were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets red clear, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof to the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
And now, boys and girls, let me hear you recite the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Since I was a small boy, 2 states have been added to our country, and 2 words have been added to the Pledge of Allegiance: under God. Wouldn't it be a pity if someone said that is a prayer and that would be eliminated from schools too?
I've been selling my soul, working all day, overtime hours, bullshit pay, so I can sit out here and waste my life away, drag back home and drown my troubles away. It's a damn shame what the world's gotten to for people like me, people like you. Wish I could just wake up and it not be true, but it is. Oh, it is living in the new world with an whole soul. These rich men north of Richmond, Lord knows they all just wanna have total control. Wanna know what you think, wanna know what you do, and they don't think you know, but I know that you do. 'Cause your dollar ain't shit, and it's taxed to no end, 'cause the rich men, 'cause the rich men. I wish politicians look out for minors, and not just minors on an island somewhere. Lord, we got folks in the street, ain't got nothing to eat, and the obese milking welfare. God, if you're 5'3" and you're 300 pounds, taxes ought not to pay for your bags of fudge rounds. Young men are putting themselves 6 feet in the ground, 'cause all this damn country does is keep on kicking them down. Lord, it's a damn shame what the world's gotten to for people like me, people like you. Wish I could just wake up and it not be true, but it is. Oh, it is living in the new world with an whole soul. These rich men north of Richmond, Lord knows they all just wanna have total control. Wanna know what you think, wanna know what you do, and they don't think you know, but I know that you do. 'Cause your dollar ain't shit, and it's taxed to no end, 'cause the rich men, north of rich men. I've been selling my soul, working all day, overtime hours for bullshit pay. Hello, happy hump day, everyone. As always, I try to have something special going on. I've been very blessed and fortunate. As always, I also start the program with my own Pledge of Allegiance, what I feel to be, but I pledge of allegiance to the Constitution of the United States of America and to the republic for which the flag stands, one nation under Almighty God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And, of course, we always have to consider the thought, the quote. What gives us that moment where we can reflect back and say, I need a quote for that day or a quote for the moment. But nobody can go back and start a new beginning. But anyone can start today and make a new ending. This was shared by Maria Robinson, the 90 through 97 first female president of Ireland. Again, nobody can go back and start a beginning, but anyone can start today and make a new ending. Again, Maria Robinson. What that is basically saying is you fumble throughout the day, but you can always try to go back and you can never recover maybe from a fumble. But you know what? You can start it all over again and have a new beginning that will have an ending that, guess what? You didn't fumble. You actually saw it all the way through. You figured it out and you made it. But these are things you have to do within yourself. You've got to have that faith in yourself. You've got to believe in yourself, because I've got to tell you personally, no one is going to believe in you more than you. People can support you. People can have faith in you. But no one can believe in you more than you can believe in yourself. And that is probably the start that we all have to go for. We really have to try that. So today I have a very unique individual. I was blessed to reach out and meet this man. Throughout my lifetime, I've always said, and I've pondered this thought with many, many people. We discussed this. A third party. Is there a need for a third party? Well, I do believe there's a need for a third party, and I've been thinking that way since 1976. John Anderson, an independent, was running up against Gerald Ford and Carter. And I told my parents, please consider John Anderson down in Minnesota. Please. They didn't. Of course, they said they'd be throwing their vote away. But I'm going to tell you something right now. This gentleman I'm about ready to introduce you to is an individual that I've had very good, deep conversations with regarding the Constitution. His name is Paul Venable, and he is, of course, with the Constitutional Party. Paul, how are you doing, sir?
I'm great. Thanks for having me, Vincent. How are you?
I'm doing much better today, much better. As always, like I said earlier with that quote, nobody can go back and start a new beginning, but anyone can start today and make a new ending. How did you feel about that quote?
I liked that quote. You know, Vincent, I also liked your version of the pledge. I've often thought about something along the lines of those words, and I think it's done well.
Thank you very much, sir. It's not, I wish I could take credit and say it's an original. I saw it, embraced it, and said, that's it. I think we need to get back to the basics of our country, of the laws within our country. First off, you were with the Constitutional Party. Can you give us an idea of what it was like to run when you did just not long ago? Just a brief synopsis, because I really want to start when you were a little tight.
Okay. Well, I have run for office twice in Missouri and twice in Idaho while I was chairman there. But in the last race, I ran for the United States Senate. Your Trudy Bush Valentine and Eric Schmidt were in that race. And that was probably one of the most intense I've done, because I traveled the state. I spoke to a lot of people. And what I found is that People are interested in the message of the Constitution. They're interested in I guess the best way I can say it is when they're coming to realize that there's something really wrong in America. And the best way I can describe it is this. We've got a constitutional crisis in America. Think of it this way. First of all, we the people, don't know the Constitution. That's problem number one. Problem number two, we the people aren't enforcing the Constitution. And problem number three, our oath-bound, I'm going to repeat that, our oath-bound public servants are either ignorant of the Constitution or they're in open defiance to it. So you fix one, you fix two, you will fix number three. And so that's pretty much the message I shared, was full compliance to the Constitution. Everywhere I spoke, someone came up to me and said, that's the message. But there are other times when I spoke somewhere and it's like they weren't ready for the paradigm. You know, I went to there was a debate. The first debate that was ditched by a Republican candidate in 20 years was done by the Missouri Press Association. It was I think it was last August and September. And they asked me questions, and you can tell when you say something that maybe the press doesn't want to hear, and they just pick themselves up and they dust themselves off as if nothing ever happened, and they don't ask you anything else about it. One of those questions I was asked, every one of the panelists were asked was, or the candidates, what is the most pressing issue? What is the most serious problem in America today? My response was the Biden administration. We could find ourselves in an unrecoverable position at any moment. And it was like nothing happened. The best way I can describe it is they quickly moved on to the next subject. And it pretty much fell on deaf ears.
That's what I was going to say. Exactly.
Right.
I was going to say that. Well, let's, before we get too far, because I agree with you, the media is definitely one of our big problems.
Okay.
Paul, I always try to ask someone, or I try to ask anyone and anyone, what influenced you as a young man, or guided you as a young man and counseled you as a young man to become the gentleman that you are today, the individual you are today? Is there anyone in particular that you said, I had an uncle or I had a teacher that really influenced you?
Yeah, it was my father. I wanted to be like my father. And he influenced me in ways that's difficult for me to express. He introduced me to the Bible at 12. And even though he wasn't a regular churchgoer, he was familiar enough with the Word of God that he could answer my questions and he could lead me where I needed to be. He was able to lead me in my life. There were a couple of things that I remember specifically. One day, he was also a World War II Army veteran. Now, it's important to remember that in World War II, you had a segregated army. So you had white enlisted men and black soldiers. Now, one day I asked him, I said, Daddy, what rank did you achieve in the Army? He says, I was a buck private and proud of it. And what I learned, which is something that I guess that now runs in the family, is that he was a little too outspoken. And he told me a couple of stories that, I don't know that I'll share here, but he spoke up, and at times it got him in. He was not politically correct, even back then. It didn't bother him to speak up to a white officer and tell him what he thought of him, and he even scared the black soldiers. I mean, he was just like that. And so I'm afraid that rubbed off onto me and all of my siblings, being somewhat outspoken. The other thing that he did is, I remember one day, and I've told this before, but I was a young kid. I had just discovered what was on the other side of midnight. I was about early teenager, and we're sitting and we're watching the TV, and the station's about to sign off. The national anthem is playing, and he gets up, walks across the room. We didn't have remotes back then, okay? To give you some idea how old I am. He gets up, he walks across the room, and he turns off the television. And I'm stunned. I look at him like, what did you just do? And here's what he said to me. He said, I don't ever want to hear America's song end. When he said that to me, he couldn't have told me in 1,000 words what he conveyed to me in that moment. Okay. Despite all the challenges that he had growing up, that he knew his ancestors had growing up, that even I had, he recognized he was a true patriot at heart, and he built into me a love for my country. And both of my parents did. My mother worked for the Department of Defense in Columbus, Ohio, and the other thing I learned from him is that my mother I went to University of Cincinnati my first year, and when I came home, I found out that my mother had become ill. Okay, she had picked up a debilitating illness, which crippled her, and it took her in 3 years. And in that ensuing 3-year period, my father converted our library, it was into a downstairs bedroom, and he and I took care of my mother, and we took care of her until the day she died. Wow, I didn't see that coming. So forgive me, but what I learned from my father is that he wasn't one of these guys that say, he wasn't huggy, he wasn't demonstrative. But what I learned from him is, love isn't just something you say, love is something you do. And what I learned as I watched him take care of my mother in her continually emaciated condition was that he didn't just love her till the day she died. He kind of never recovered. He died 15 years later, and he was still in love with my mother. So
Wow, that's very touching. And your father was correct in actions speak louder than words, and your actions of love will always speak louder than a bouquet of flowers or the words themselves.
well, forgive me, I didn't see that coming.
It's okay,
I
sir.
thought I'd be able to get through that without getting emotional, but
That's
that's
all right. That just shows
yeah,
you've got a heart. Are you kidding me? You've got a heart. You love and you miss, and you've
yeah.
got great memories, of course, as well. I can tell. So, what did you get away from the one thing I kind of missed maybe when he turned the anthem off so soon? What was his reason for turning it off so soon?
When he said, "I don't ever want to hear America's song end," what does that mean to you?
Okay, you want to have it go on forever. Okay, I
Right.
got it. I got it now.
Yeah,
I
okay.
got it now. That
Yeah.
that's absolutely quite a wow. That's
He
quite a
was.
beautiful.
My dad was always teaching, and he taught me something, and I've remembered it. It's been one of my driving memories because I too want my posterity to know what liberty looks like.
Now you went to Cincinnati, the University of Cincinnati, correct?
Well, I went my first year in college to University of Cincinnati, and I was out for a few years because my mother had become ill.
Okay.
And then I spent a few years at the Ohio State University, and I went I wanted to pay for my own education. So as it turned out, I went when I had money, and when I didn't have money, I went back to work. And eventually, I got to the place where I thought I was about to finish, and by that time, I was married with kids at home. And then my father died. And when he died, I administered his estate. It was the hardest thing I'd done, but it was the end of school. Okay, it took me 2 years to do that. I wasn't be able to finish my schooling. I got a job. Luckily, he had bought an Apple IIe for my little brother, like years before. And I taught myself how to program in BASIC, me and a friend of mine. And from that experience, I just picked up a sales job in computers, and that led to a career in information technology, which was very, very fruitful for me. I really enjoyed it, but understand, I've done computer sales, technical support, network support, network design and management. One of the things I learned is that it was my job to hate technology so that my customers would love it. And so what happens is you have a problem with your computer. I had to wrestle with the problem. All right. And I remember when I was on call, I worked at a bank in Columbus, and I remember I was going out to the parking lot. I stuck my key in the door of the car, and my pager went off. This is 5 p.m. on a Friday. At 5 a.m. on Saturday, I finally left the building. So, because that's what we did. That's kind of the thing we do. Also, when I am,
He's our IT guy, by the way. I was talking about Chad. This is our IT guy from Truckit. So
right. Well, he probably understands what I'm talking about. And so what happens is, and the other thing that was important to me, I'm glad I started my career in sales, because if you're in computer sales, then you had to be nice to your customers because you wanted them to buy from you, and that's how you ate. But what it allowed me to do was relate as well to carbon-based units as silicon-based units. Okay, so relate as well to people as computers, and being able to relate well to both has been one of the pleasantries of that career, of that choice of vocation. So I've enjoyed it, and I've been blessed by it.
So that you stuck with that for the more or less the rest of your life then?
That was, I've got over 30 years of experience in information technology. So yes, that was pretty much my whole career. I've done computer support. I did have a really cool retirement job. When I left my last job, I swore I would never work for another corporation, with one exception. That is, if I had the opportunity to work for an airline. So I had this really cool retirement job. I worked for United Airlines at the Columbia Airport, and I worked outside, and I worked my way into the position of the ramp trainer, which means you trained. They call it under the wing, and you trained the people that managed the airplane when it was on the ground. And it was, one, I love to fly. I like being around planes, and I didn't have to pay for a gym membership because it was a very physical job. And so I enjoyed that. It's interesting that what happened is around COVID, this was around the time that, maybe a year and a half before COVID, and then through COVID, United came out with a mask mandate, and I took a test from my doctor and discovered that I'm unable to wear a mask. And that's because my blood oxygen level would drop from the 90s into the 70s in less than 20 minutes.
That's not good at all.
Well, when this happened to me, I wondered if that's not true of many people, but United wouldn't accommodate me. and I lost my job because of that. So they let me go, and it was disappointing, and but I've moved on. I'm retired, and I'm enjoying it.
Right on. Uh, you mentioned that you had worked for the airport, everything from the wings under to the belly. I actually worked, believe it or not, with flight services, signature services out of flight
What is that?
signature services out of Minneapolis.
What
So
is flight signature services?
well, what we did was, for instance, like you start out handling luggage and loading the belly of the plane. Then you eventually graduate, like I did, to dumping the toilets,
Right?
and then you had to learn how to glycol the planes with in the wintertime, glycol them down so the ice wouldn't form up on the wing flaps and stuff like that. Eventually, I learned actually how to not only to fuel the airplane but to defuel it. Sometimes you had to take the fuel out for whatever reason they told you to
Mhm.
do it. Signature flight operations is what it was called.
Well, actually, you did the exact same thing we did, except we contracted the fuel. Everything you did is the same thing we did,
Wow, I even got to marshal on the tarmac the
right?
airplanes coming in,
We
and
did
got
that.
to drive the Huff.
The
Everyone,
tug. It's
well,
called
we
a tug.
we called it the Huff because it was
Okay.
so hot. It was just one big machine. It was
It's
just
a big hunk of metal with a motor in it, right?
a motor, and you push it out there, and once you get it out there, you release the pin from it, you detach it, then you have to set the set pin back in for the pilot radio control up top to let them know that the pin's in and they're safe to go, and put that keeper pin in. And then
You and I have that in common.
wow, I mean, I did it for about 4 or 5 months, ended up with
Yeah.
another job, and I'm like, I'm done, I'm out of here. But
I loved it. I just loved it.
yeah, and
I would probably still be doing it,
you learn about the different planes, like the DC-7s and the
right?
747s, and so on. You get to learn by the 2 engines or the 3 engines, so on and so forth. So
Right.
wow, that's quite interesting. I'm surprised. I mean, we actually walked that same path almost hand in hand, kind of.
Sure.
When you think about it, because it was, and like you said, it was a very, very physical position,
Hmm.
especially with people's luggage. You just never you go to grab something and you think the three last ones were okay, and then all of a sudden that one and it yanks your elbow out of joint or whatever.
Yeah.
But enough about signature flight operations. I do know they're still in business, so
Good.
that's one good thing. So let's get on to where you decided somewhere in your life you said, I want to make a change. I want to serve the people. When did you actually start doing that, and where?
It didn't come up quite that way. What happened is I grew up in Ohio, and I was working in Ohio, and I woke up one day in January of 2003, and I knew something. I woke up with a piece of knowledge, and this is what I told my wife. I said, um, Ma, um, we're moving this year. She said, okay. I said, we're going west. She said, what? What actually happened is that I just woke up and knew that I was supposed to go to Idaho. I knew two things when I woke up. One, our family needed to go to Idaho. Two, it had something to do with the Constitution. I'm telling you, that's how I got it. I just woke up with one morning with that knowledge. And so I told her we're going west, and she'd always wanted to go west, and I wouldn't have anything to do with it. But we did at the end of 2003. We had we were in Utah for a year, and then the end of that year, near the end of 2004, we moved to Idaho. And while we were in Utah, I don't, if you remember, 2004, there was an election, and George W. Bush was elected to his second term, right?
Yes.
And a lot of people considered him a hero. I I find it hard to confess that maybe I may have been one of those. And so, but my wife had joined the Constitution Party. We were in Ohio, and she got more connected with it in Utah. And I wasn't. There was a short time where she and I couldn't talk politics because I was supportive of Bush. Okay, you know what happens on January 20th, pretty much every year?
That's when the not every year. I'm sorry. No.
Yeah, not since this administration, but typically every year on January 20th, the president gives a State of the Union address.
State of the Union address.
And I was working for, I was working on a military contract. I was in DC, and my hotel room on that night, on January 20th, 2004, I could see the Capitol Dome from my hotel window. And so I'm watching the State of the Union address. And by the time it was over, I said to myself, who are you and what did you do with the guy that I voted for? Okay. It's like George Bush shook me by the lapels and said, get out of the Republican Party as fast as you can, turn and run the other way. All right. So I became, my wife and I, she had convinced me, okay, well, I guess Bush had convinced me that there was another way. So my wife was invited to the Constitution Party. I was too. And one of the most important thing I learned when we were in Utah was that I took a constant class in the Constitution. And when we moved to Idaho, I started teaching those classes. And it was teaching the classes that, for whatever reason, bumped me into a position where I wound up being the chairman of the Constitution Party of Idaho. And from there, I continued to teach, okay, because I was convinced, and I'm still convinced, more so than ever, that full compliance to the Constitution is what we need to unite on. And the reason we need to unite on it is because the enemies of liberty are united on it. They're trying to break it. They know if they break this border wall, that freedom is lost throughout the world. Okay. Anyway, I'm in Idaho, and when I ran for office, you asked me, like, what caused me to determine that I wanted to be of this type of service. I didn't. What happened is, if in the political structure, the Democratic and Republican parties have kind of a legislative lock on who is voted for in any state. The party structure is baked into state law. And state law in Idaho was that in order to maintain ballot access, you had to run two people for statewide office. Okay, no one was available. Guess what? Okay, I had to run for statewide office, and I recruited someone else. So we had our two people, statewide office in Idaho is a state office. So I ran for state legislature. Two of us ran for state legislature. We kept us on the ballot, and then that was 2008. In 2010, I ran for lieutenant governor. And so again, we needed to maintain ballot access. It was a statewide office, and I happened to be in the position. When I moved to Missouri, and we moved to Missouri end of 2017, actually beginning of 2018, and I was new to the state. I don't know if you remember, if you've lived here for a while, what was on the ballot in 2018 was Clean Missouri. Does that sound familiar? Okay.
I believe so.
Okay, and also Josh Hawley ran for Senate. Okay.
Was Claire McCaskill coming out of office at that time?
He won. Claire McCaskill was she. Yeah. I was going to say he won against her. Claire McCaskill was running for re-election, and she was unseated by Josh Hawley. So that's what's happened in 2018. Again, we needed someone to run in 2020. I ran for Secretary of State, and again, we needed someone to run in 2022, and so I ran for United States Senate. So for 4 races, I have to confess this, for 4 races, I didn't run necessarily because I wanted to. But no, let me rephrase that. For 3 races, I didn't run because I wanted to. This last race, I did. Okay, this last race, I ran because no one was saying the message that I felt needed to be heard. And what was that message? That we need to use the Constitution. We need to obey the Constitution, and we need to hold our oath-bound public servants accountable to holding their oath. And one of the things that we don't know, one of the things that people don't know, I don't know if your audience knows. Everyone thinks they need to wait for the next election. No, you don't. I know some states have recall. Some states have, some counties in Missouri have recall, but you still don't have to wait till the next election. You know why?
Why?
Have you ever read Section 3 of the 14th Amendment? Let's go there, okay? Because this was my message. You see, what happens is the people are not without power in the Constitution. And so you go to the 14th Amendment, and it's a little long, but I'm going to go ahead and read it, all right? And you follow along with me, okay?
Yes, sir.
Now, by the way, some people think that this applies to the President of the United States. It doesn't. I'll explain that in a minute. This is Section 3. No person shall be a senator or representative in Congress or elector of president and vice president or hold any office, civil or military, under the United States or under any state who, having previously taken an oath as a member of Congress or as an officer of the United States or as a member of any state legislature or as an executive or judicial officer of any state, to support the Constitution of the United States, shall have engaged in insurrection or rebellion against the same, or given aid or comfort to the enemies thereof. But Congress may, by a vote of 2/3 of each house, remove such disability. Do you know what that says? It says, I'll save you the time of figuring it out. It says if your oath-bound public servant violates his oath of office, they don't hold a right to this office. They can be removed, and they should be removed. And that's something that, the Constitution is only 5,000 pages. You can read it in one sitting. And I recommend to your audience and everyone I meet to read the Constitution and dive into it, because there are treasures there that we don't realize we have, and this is one of them. Not only, it gets better than that. If you're in Missouri, Section 15 of Article 3 says nearly the same thing. And forgive me, if you hang on, can you hang on a minute? Sure. I think I've got that right here in my... No, I don't.
Did you say Section 3 of Article 15?
No, I said Section 15 of Article 3.
Oh, okay.
Okay. If you haven't, it's in my other bookshelf. Do you have that?
Yes, sir. I'm looking at it right now. Section 3, and you said Article 15.
Would you read Article 15 for us? No, I'm not Article. Section 15. Section 15. I'm sorry.
Okay. I'm looking at, and I'm just now between 3 and 4. I am so sorry. There's no Section 15.
All right. Hang on. I'll find it.
You were talking now about the judicial branch, and that's something that a believe it or not, I did notice with the with Maria Robinson being president of Ireland, she was actually looking more towards the jurists' side as well. You know, the jury side of government.
Okay. Well, I was just quoting the 14th Amendment, but hang on just a minute. Forgive me for moving away from the screen, but this is a really important one. Here we go. I'll find it for you. Article 3. I may have gotten it wrong, but because I need to know if I've gotten it wrong, because that's what I've been telling people. Article 1.
Yeah, Article 3 has 3 sections only.
All right. Okay, then I've got it. I think I've got it backward. Hang on, let's see something.
Or where you could.
All right.
Kind of.
Okay.
Guys, here we go.
You know, I will look for it. You go ahead. I'll find it because that's really important. It's almost like the 14th Amendment. That section is baked into the Missouri Constitution, and I'll find it. Okay.
You know, folks, what Paul's doing right now is what we all should do at times when we need to, is to look at what the Constitution says for our rights. And you know, Heath, you said that you said, you know, we don't know, you know, if we don't know the Constitution. Well, that's very true. And,
Okay.
Go ahead, Paul.
I found it. It's Article 3, Section 15. It's at the top of page 28 in the most recent version of the Constitution. I'll share it with you.
Sure.
Ready? You see it?
No.
It says, okay, oath of office of members of assembly, administration, effect of refusal to take oath, and conviction of violation. Here's what it says. Every senator or representative elect before entering upon the duties of his office shall take and subscribe the following oath or affirmation. Listen to this carefully. Quote, I do solemnly swear or affirm that I will support the Constitution of the United States and of the state of Missouri and faithfully perform the duties of my office, and that I will not knowingly receive, directly or indirectly, any money or other valuable thing for the performance or non-performance of any act or duty pertaining to my office, other than the compensation allowed by law, end quote. The oath shall be administered in the halls of the respective houses to the members thereof by a judge of the Supreme Court or a circuit court, or after the organization by the presiding officer of either house, and shall be filed in the office of the Secretary of State. Any senator or representative refusing to take said oath or affirmation shall be deemed to have vacated his office, and any member convicted of having violated his oath or affirmation shall be deemed guilty of perjury and be forever disqualified from holding any office of trust or profit in this state. Last January, I went to the Missouri House because I wanted to see them take this oath in person. I wanted to see it with my own eyes because I believe we should know the value of that and hold our elected representatives accountable. Let me ask you and your audience a question. How often do you sign a contract without reading it, without knowing what's in it?
I learned that when I was in the Navy. Navy stands for never again volunteer yourself. So that was the first time I learned that lesson. But
Okay.
seriously, you know, usually you do read a contract over.
Yeah, most of the time you read a contract, and because I'm in IT, believe it or not, I read software agreements. I know everybody doesn't do that. You know, they click the button because they want to use the app. All right. They click the button because they want to use the app. All right. But I actually pause and read software agreements. They're pretty much all the same, but every once in a while, something catches you. All right. And there were times when I have read an agreement and it's given me the opportunity to opt out of something that I wouldn't have known if I hadn't read it. But here's the point. Here's the point I'm trying to make. When Nancy Pelosi says you get to see what this legislation's in it when you pass it, she has disqualified herself from
Yeah.
office.
Yes.
Okay? And the people who have followed her instructions have disqualified themselves from office. If
Why
the
should,
go ahead.
why should we know after the fact what it is? We should know right now where the monies or funds are going. But a lot of
Well,
times they don't want to let us know.
that's exactly my point. Why are they putting their vote, their legislative signature on a piece of legislation? Why are they signing a contract, without reading it, without knowing what's in it? And by the way, there is an overarching contract called your state or federal constitution, which you better be abiding by, right? So in other words, what you do in the halls of a legislature or Congress are dictated by the primary contract that you took an oath to follow of either the Constitution of the United States or the Constitution of your state. I'm telling you that we, the people, have power that we have no idea we have.
We're not,
And pardon?
we're not using the power that we have.
We're not using the power. We don't know it, and we're not using it. And so this was my message as a candidate. It is still my message as chairman of the Constitution Party, and it goes. Let me share this with you. If it were up to me, there wouldn't be parties. Okay, George Washington, in his farewell address, warned about the dangers of faction. I recommend it. In fact, it's on my campaign website is still up. Okay, and it's youwinmissouri.org, and I recommend that you go to resources and read George Washington's farewell address, because he warned the people about the dangers of faction. He was referring to political parties. Yep. And their ability to divide people. And so what has happened is, over the last several generations, we have been conditioned to be divided by red versus blue, Democrat versus Republican, black versus white, labor versus management. Okay, we've been conditioned into all of these divisions. My question is, when will we dare to be American? I'll tell you a little story that I guarantee you most of your listeners don't know. I grew up during the 60s. All right. I became aware during the 60s. And so that was, there are a lot of changes that happened that were dramatic. I was, one of the things I remember is that in 1963, my dad bought a home in Columbus, Ohio, that was 4,300 square feet. He bought it for $18,000 on a postal worker's salary, which was about, back then I looked, $4 an hour, and that wasn't bad back then. We raised a family of 5 kids in a house. We were in that home for 30 years. And he raised his family on, well, obviously, it was wages went up, prices went up, etc. And he paid all the bills. My mother worked, but she didn't have to. And the point I want to make is that back then, a family could live on the wages of a single wage earner.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and we did. The other thing about that generation is they were savers. You know why they were savers? Because they grew up during the Depression, and everybody saved. Luckily for both of my parents, my dad grew up on his grandfather's farm, and my mother grew up on Long Island on, her father was from Antigua, and he wanted land, and he was part of a community that was founded there on Long Island, and so my parents saw soup lines, but they weren't in them. Okay, but the point I want to make is they were savers, and so when our family Studebaker broke in 1964, my mom wrote a check for a car. She wrote a check for a car. Okay. She did it again 8 years later when she needed another car. And so that's the type of, that's kind of the way we lived then. Interestingly, my little brother sent me a Zillow listing of that house we grew up in. It sold, I think, a year ago in January for $550,000. Now, what's important to remember is this. For a postal worker to buy that house today, do you know where you'd have to be making? About $225,000 a year. Okay. Now, are postal workers making that? No, they are not. All right. But let me swing back around for a minute. The week we bought that house I think we moved in on a Tuesday. A Friday, I lived close enough to my elementary school, my junior high, my high school, that I could walk home for lunch, do my homework, and still get back to school in time. And one Friday, that week we moved into the house, I walked back to school after lunch, and I saw something was different. Let me tell you what it is. I walked into school, and all my teachers were crying. And that was really bizarre. But when they sent all the students home, and when I got home, my dad was crying, my mother was crying, and they were both home. It was November 22nd, 1963. Do you understand?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and so I was 9 years old. I didn't know, first of all, I had no idea that there was even a possibility that my real life, a larger than life hero could cry. I didn't even know it was possible. But I'll tell you what I did know. I did know that something was very wrong in the world. Okay? A 9-year-old boy, something was wrong in America that day. And it's been going wrong for a while. And so I guess what I want to share is we've been conditioned, and we're being conditioned by trauma and relief. Trauma and relief. You know what I mean by trauma and relief? Let me define that for you. Before COVID, what was gas? Do you remember what you paid for gas?
About $1.76,
before COVID?
$1.40.
About $1.76. Okay, and so about $1.76, $1.40, and then it went up to $2.50, right? Yeah. And wow, that was a smack, right? But it goes up to $2.50, and then what happens? Goes down to $1.99. What do? You take a deep breath. Okay, what actually happened? Your gas went up 50 cents, but now you're relieved because it's not as expensive as it was. And then it goes from $1.99 to $3.25, and you are mad as hell. And then what happens?
It goes back again.
It goes down to $2.50. Oh, you take a deep breath again. Your gas went up 80 some cents. Net effect, but you're relieved because it's not 325 again. And that pattern repeats itself. And it's just not with the price of gas.
It's with
Okay.
everything.
It's with everything. Trauma relief, trauma relief. And so what's happening is we're being conditioned to a higher state of trauma or a higher state of division to the point where we need to recognize that we're being manipulated. Yes, groceries are the same way. I saw the comment there. Okay, you're right. And so what we need to do is unite. And what should we unite on? We should unite on the Constitution. Okay. So the plan, here's what I recommend. And in fact, this is what the Constitution Party is doing. I really don't care what the Republican Party or the Democratic Party are doing, but this is what we are doing. We are, step one, here's what I tell people: educate yourself and educate your neighbors. First thing you need to do, read the Constitution, get a copy. All right. Call me, write me, I'll send you one. But it's very easy to get a copy of the Constitution somewhere. You can find it online. I've got it on my camp website. You can download it from there. You can print it. Get it. So educate yourself. Educate your neighbors. Get to know them, because we need to begin to unite as Americans and come together and take care of each other. It doesn't matter what we look like or what we believe, because there's an economic warfare being waged on us. And it's not just an economic warfare. I'll get to that momentarily. So we need to educate ourselves, we need to educate our neighbors, and then we need to act on what we know. This 3-step program I'm actually sharing with our Constitution Party leadership, and they're going to be sharing it in their neighborhoods. And if there's anybody out there that simply wants to understand the Constitution and put it to work, at some point during the program, we'll have, I guess there'll be some way to contact me, and we want to do this. Our goal is to have contacts in every county. Our goal is to have education in every county. And I don't care whether you're Republicans or Democrats, but we need to come together on the Constitution. I can't emphasize enough how much power we have if we'll use it.
Well, I agree with you 100%. Right now, I just put this banner up because I was told today, and this is just going from a clerk that I trust, on September 1st, do not work and do not purchase or buy one thing, just one day nationwide, just to really show where our American dollar is at and how it would really affect the overall government. Right now, they're proposing, they want us to do this. So, folks, if you want to stand united, this is a one day. When you said that, by the way, to become united together, I thought about what she had told me. September 1st, don't purchase anything, don't buy anything. If possible, call off sick and see what happens to the economy for a day. See what happens with Wall Street. It would be amazing. But, getting back to what you were saying earlier, you had, wow, we've had several comments come in. Yes, the Constitution needs to be reread and not rewritten.
Amen.
Yes.
Thank you, Heath.
Yeah, you're absolutely correct. But, you were talking about the oath of office. And I'm just throwing this out there because it's a fact. Kamala Harris became vice president. She set up a GoFundMe page to release the protesters that were vandalizing Minneapolis, Minnesota. One guy got out 3 times, but the 3rd time he got out, he killed someone. Oh, you don't know that? I know that case.
No, I didn't know. I didn't know that.
Yeah. The third,
So
the third time released, he killed someone. Doesn't that make her technically complicit to murder?
oh, there's more to Kamala Harris than that. Let me tell you what there's a lot more to
I'm
that.
not making that story up. I'm just giving you the points.
No, I know. One of the other things that this is important to understand, because one of my questions is I'm getting a lot of trouble for this. Is she even qualified to be vice president? No, the question is, here's the question I have. Were her parents American citizens when she was born? I don't know that anyone's answered that question. And there's another reason, there's another issue that I brought up during my campaign that and it was a position that I brought up, and that is one of the things that we're not using, one of the things that is a solution is what I refer to as First Amendment petitions. So we've got 5 rights in the First Amendment. You know what they are, right? Can you say them without picking up
freedom of speech, freedom of arms, freedom to remain silent is the 5th. The 3rd one is, gosh, I can't remember the other 2.
Here, I'll give them to you. It's speech, religion, assembly, petition, and speech, religion, assembly, petition, and that's embarrassing because I just said this. I say this just about every day. Speech, religion, assembly, petition, and press. Those are 5. Okay, those are your 5 First Amendment rights. Okay, one of the ones we are not using effectively is petition. And on my campaign website is a petition to remove Joe Biden from office. And not because there was fraud, but because it was a constitutional violation that every member of Congress on January 4th, 2021 was informed about it. I said January 4th. That's important. A petition was sent to Congress on January 4th. The petitioners were notified that it was received on January 5th. And on January 6th, yes, there was an insurrection at the Capitol, but it didn't come from the outside. Every member of Congress who participated in that, I guess the nice way of calling it a charade, knew they had been informed that a constitutional violation had taken place. Congress was the one venue where that had been resolved, and they all walked away. Instead of, and so what you've got is, what you've got for, just a minute, my son is about to come in. He doesn't know that I'm recording, so hang on, sorry about that. Hang on.
Okay.
Hey, baby, what is it?
Real life. This is real life.
What's going on, Noah?
Speech, religion, assembly.
It's working? It's not working?
It is working. But it's not.
It's not. Okay. All right. So Noah, I'm on a podcast. Come here. Say hi.
Noah, how are you?
He said, "How are you?" Fine. All right. This is my son Noah, and he wanted to bring me some. Yeah, I see it's broken. I might have another one. Okay. I can't do it right now because I'm on a podcast. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. All right. Thank you. See ya.
We even said we even had a couple people say hi, Noah, and
yeah, I usually don't lock my office door, and I didn't know he was coming in. I told my wife I was recording, but I forgot to tell him.
Can you say those 5 again? It's speech, religion, assembly, press.
Okay. It's speech, religion, assembly, press, and petition.
Petition. Just want to make sure I have that. I was thinking the Constitution itself, and I don't know.
No, that's okay. Um, um, what one of the most important things we can do as a people is to petition our government. It would probably almost take another show to go through that. I'm actually putting together a presentation on how that works and how that's supposed to work, and I'm going to be sharing it with. Um, so I'm also the regional chairman of the Constitution Party for 12 states, and I'm going to be sharing this with the leaders in those states. And after I do that, I'm going to do it. I'm going to share it with our state leaders here, and it's something that is it would be help. It would be a help for me to just finish that petition and share it, and then try to, finish that presentation and share it because I can do it with a little more clarity. But the point is, we haven't been using the right of petition effectively. So let me ask you this: how often? You ever been in a protest? I have.
No, no.
You've never been in a protest. Well, I have. I know a number of people have. Did I mention anywhere in the First Amendment the right to protest?
No. But
It's
we
not
do have
there.
that. What's that?
It's not there.
Correct.
We have the right to assemble.
Assemble.
We have the right to petition, but the right to protest is not quite there. Here's what happens. You go to a protest. Well, let's say, you have a number of people who go to a protest. There's been a lot of those at school boards, right? Or city councils or on street corners. And you go to a protest, and by the time it's over, you come home sweaty. And what have you accomplished? I'll tell you what you've done. You've accumulated the need to take a shower. But what has happened is the people you protested to most likely have gone home, and they don't even remember the next day what you protested. So the right of petition is civil discourse with consequences. And so that's why we need to use petition. The other thing that about a protest is sometimes they can get out of control. Think Washington, think Seattle, think Portland, think those peaceful protests that supposedly happened in those cities. But let me tell you the cities you didn't hear about. Think Boise, Idaho, and think Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. Do you know what happened in those two cities when Black Lives Matter buses rolled in?
No.
They turned around and rolled out. Do you know why? Coeur d'Alene especially. Guess why? I bet you would know.
They just don't put up with the shenanigans of that kind of behavior.
In Coeur d'Alene, there was an armed citizen on every street corner.
Wow.
Okay. They essentially, we don't do that here. See, let me get into another part of the Constitution that we don't understand. And we're going to talk about the Second Amendment. Do you know the Second Amendment? Can you, without looking at your Constitution,
No,
can you tell me? Okay.
No, you did that too.
I'm sorry.
I do know that it can't be foreign or domestic, and you can.
Okay.
I can't. So go ahead.
Second Amendment. Oftentimes, most people understand this part of the Second Amendment. The right to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. That is not the Second Amendment. Here's how it goes. A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of the free state. I'm going to repeat that. A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of the free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Okay? 4 sections there. Okay, and what does that mean? The reason you have the right to keep and bear arms is because you want to have a secure and free state. Therefore, you, the people, have the right to bear arms because you are part of the militia. Now, I don't care if the press wants to use, yes, necessary is the key. I don't care if the press wants to use militia as a swear word. It's in the Constitution 6 times. And in fact, there isn't a lot of explanation for it because they understood what the militia was. They didn't have to explain it in 1787 when they wrote the Constitution because it was a part of your everyday life. the male citizens between, I believe it was 17 and 54, and depending on the state, were part of the militia. Now, it gets better than that. Okay. Article 1, Section 8. Let's talk about Article 1, Section 8 for a minute.
Okay.
Do you know what Article 1, Section 8 is?
Go into it right now.
Okay, I'll summarize it for you. Article 1, Section 8 is the powers that Congress has. If it's not there, they don't have it. Okay. So now we were talking about the Second Amendment. So let's go to, in Article 1, Section 8, the first part of Section 8, we call it, it's kind of like the preamble, because it describes how it introduces this section. And then I start numbering them. So when I go down to 14, here's what it says. Article 1, Section 8, power shall have Congress to provide for the calling forth of the militia to execute the laws of the Union, suppress insurrections, and repel invasions. Okay, I got a question. Are we having an invasion in America right now?
Yeah, we are.
All right. So if Congress has the power to call for the militia to repel an invasion, let me tell you why I'm not a Democrat or Republican. Because none of them are doing what they're supposed to do. No, not one. Well, let me take that back. I have heard in the last year or so, maybe one Congress per a year use the term invasion. Okay, they go down to the border and they say, we've got a humanitarian problem down here.
No,
and this is what they say. And we do. And then the Republicans are blaming it on the Democrats. What Republican has said to you, we need to call forth the militia? Which one?
not one.
I actually believe that there has been one, but their voice has been so obscure that, this should be, I should all be saying this, but it gets better than that. Even better than that. Let's go down to Clause 15. I'm going to read it to you because I don't want to get this wrong. Congress shall have power to provide for organizing, arming, and disciplining the militia and for governing such part of them as may be employed in the service of the United States, reserving to the states respectively the appointment of the officers and the authority of training the militia according to the discipline prescribed by Congress. Okay, do you understand what that means?
Well, they're supposed to pay for it technically for us. They should back
Okay.
us on it.
Let me put it to you this way. All right. You know who let me put it to you this way. If Congress has power to do something, that means they have the authority under this article to use the money from the public treasury to pay to put guns in your hands and teach you how to use them. Did you hear what I said? You want to solve the school shooting problem? First of all, take the drugs out of the schools. And I'm not just talking about the illegal drugs. I'm talking about the prescription drug. Take the drugs out of the schools and then teach your youth the safe and proper method of using guns. So that by the time they are 17 or 18 or 19, they can take their place in a militia that's organized according to the Constitution. Now, the other thing is, here's the flip side of this coin. If there is a member of Congress who is claiming that we should have gun control, now something you need to know, and this is obvious to most of us. Gun control does work, right? Hitler believed gun control worked. Stalin believed gun control worked. Mao believed gun control worked. Okay, and it did work for them, didn't it? But gun control has always preceded the most heinous genocides on earth. Okay, if you are a member of Congress, if you are a member of a state legislature and you are asking for gun control, guess what? You Mr. and Mrs. John Q. Citizen had the responsibility to call them out and remove them from office. Why? Because they're violating their oath. It's as simple as that.
Well, that's just, you and I, Paul, were talking, and this is no joke. I've even mentioned this to several of my family and friends around me. I think of Biden and his mother saying, "You can grow up and become president." I look at what we have in John Fetterman from Pennsylvania, which that's where I was born and raised, and I think to myself, why can't I be governor? Because really, I told you, really, the very first thing is you hold every single person right now in this state accountable for violations to their oath of office, and you remove them. You flat
Right.
out, you flat out remove them.
Now, I want you to know that there's some resistance to this. There actually needs we actually need to work on the mechanism to do that, and that's what I'm doing. We're prepping the petition process and reaching the people with education so that we know how to do this. Remember, I said earlier, when your oath-bound public servant is violating their oath of office, why do we have to wait 2 years or 4 years for an election to remove them? We don't. That's the good news. We don't. Now, there's something else I need to share with you, just in case my headset is telling me that it's about out of power. And if it loses power, I'll have to turn it off and take it out. And I hope you'll still be able to hear me clearly. Okay.
Okay.
So, but tech thing aside, I just don't have an extra one right now.
And you have,
Um,
but you have somewhere to be at 6:30?
what time is it? Oh
It's
my! Oh, Vincent, I'm having so much fun. Anyway,
Seriously. And I was going to say, I would love to have you come back on again, because I think there's that much you have.
well, what I would probably like to do is once I prep my presentation, then maybe we should share that
And collaborate together.
and,
Yes.
and collaborate together. But what I would ask you and your audience is just to reach out to me directly. My email address is Paul Venable, PaulVenable at. This is a long one. I'm trying to shorten it, but it's constitutionpartymo.org. So if you want to put that in the banner, please reach out to me. We need leaders in counties. We need leaders in precincts. We need to educate ourselves, educate our neighbors, and act on what we know. Because this contract that we have when everything breaks down, we have the responsibility. We, the people, have the responsibility to hold our elected representatives accountable. We haven't been doing that. We haven't been enforcing the Constitution. It's up to us. And so yeah, go ahead.
Paul, you said that's Paul Venable at constitutionparty.mo.
No, it's constitutionpartymo.org.
Oh, ORJ, gotcha.
Yeah, Constitution Party MO. All right. And if we still have a few minutes, and so if that plays on the banner for a little bit, please reach out to me. We are looking for leadership because we've just got. Sometimes I wonder how long we have, Vincent.
Sir,
Yes.
we may think we have long, but God lets us know how long we have.
Well, in fact, that's my very point. If he gets to the point where he just throws his hands up and say, we're done with this, at least I want him to find me doing his work. And not only that, okay, one of the reasons I'm still doing this, and you will probably understand this. You'll probably understand this reference. There are two reasons I'm still doing this. One, I still believe there are more than 10 righteous men in America. Two, I still believe that there are yet hundreds of people, thousands of people, maybe even a few million who have not yet bowed the knee to Baal. Before I wrap up, let me share with you what we're really fighting. You know, you're familiar with this verse in Ephesians, for we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against powers, against principalities, against the rulers of darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places. What's important to understand is that when Adam and Eve were given, two particular commandments. Here was the first one: be fruitful and multiply and replenish the earth. Give birth, have babies, right?
Mhm.
And then by the sweat of thy face, they get kicked out of the garden. They said, well, guess not what? Now by the sweat of thy face shalt thou eat thy bread. Okay, my favorite four-letter word is work. One of the things I forgot to tell you about my dad is he taught me how to work. All right, so excuse me. Now, what did Cain learn? What did Cain discover? That he could get power and gain by the shedding of blood. Let me tell you, I don't support the divisions that we talked about earlier, but there's one division that's not reconcilable. There are those who are getting their wealth and power by bloodshed. They make money from war. They make money from death. They increase their wealth and power by the shedding of blood. Okay, that's not reconcilable. We cannot accept that, right? That's we may be able to work through a number of divisions, but that's not one of them. And so what's happening is there is warfare being done on the American people as we speak. There's economic warfare. We have an invasion of our borders. We have people being shot with needles. And in fact, what's even worse with that is that they're being coerced into they were coerced into taking a shot to keep their jobs, to be able to travel, to be able to move around. What forcible penetration is called? There's another word for it. It's called rape. And so what is happening is the people are being abused, and I'm calling for us to wake up, to raise the title of liberty, to stand up and advance the cause of liberty. And when I use the term advance, I mean this is not a conservative value. If you want to give me fighting words, call me a conservative, because it's conservatives who at twice in my lifetime had the Republicans in the House, the Senate, and the presidency, and they didn't do anything about what. And as a result of that, they left us with a generation of people who believe they have a right to an abortion in a document they have never read. The rights they don't have in a document they've never read. So here's what's happened. We lost a generation. In 50 years, we lost how many million people? 73 million? Okay, and you're right. And they did nothing to move the goalpost. Nothing. So don't call me a conservative, because this is what you get. We get the benefits of all their years of having done nothing, and now it's time for us to fix it. It's time for we, the people, to fix this problem that's been left by those who... You don't make points on defense, Vincent. You don't make points on defense. And so what I'm asking your listeners to do, your viewers, is to advance the cause of liberty, to unite on the Constitution, to come together. Let me share this with you. I was going to share it earlier. When I brought up the 60s, I remember there was a saying when I was a kid. This is uncomfortable to share, but I'll tell you. There was a saying among black people: if you're white, you're all right. If you're yellow, you're mellow. If you're brown, stick around. If you're black, stay back. This was and here's what it had to do with the shade of your skin. There were people who thought they were better than me because their skin was lighter than mine. But here's what the 60s did, okay? And sometimes we refer to them as the assassination 60s. We lost JFK, RFK, Medgar Evers, Malcolm X, Martin Luther King. And it something happened in this mix. And what happened is black people rejected that division. Do you understand? They rejected it. They realized what it was and they said, we're done with that. So you heard in the 60s people saying, I'm black and I'm proud. They shut it off. And I'll tell you what, we need to learn the lesson that black people learned in the 60s, that we needed to be united. Now, everything we did, it came out of the 60s, it wasn't good. But the very fact that we recognized that we were being divided was a watershed. And that needs to happen today. We need to have that watershed. And not only are we divided by economics or color or religion, okay, we're divided by issue. Everyone is pursuing an issue. Yes?
You're right, but the thing that I'm getting that I have been sensing for quite some time, number one, I think you and I in conversation identified that the fractured foundation of family is a problem.
Right.
But I think that it goes one step right past that, which is the educational system. Because
Wow.
the educational system is like half of your whole life for that 20 years of growing up. And right now we've got so many people saying, hey, I don't want to tell that parent that their cute little boy is dressing up like a cute little girl now, or that I want to give them drugs, or that I want to help them get their surgeries. I mean, we got that division right now in our schools. And that I think is hugest of everything around us.
Here, the communists understood that if they got the children, they would eventually get the parents. They would get the society. Because what happens? Children grow up and they become the leaders. All right.
Yeah.
So we need to protect our children. You know, what I think we ought to do, and it doesn't make me comfortable to say this, okay, but ought to have a mass exodus from the school system. Because here's what happens. They get paid for having seats, butts and seats. Okay. If you don't have that, I know there was one, I can't find the story, but there was one school district who evacuated a school. They just backed off of it. Okay. And right. And so what happens, you know what happened? The school closed because it stopped getting money for students that weren't there.
Yep.
All right. Now there is a better option, I think, because is that schools need to be locally controlled. You've got federal money coming into schools. I've got a response for that. Okay. Your state needs to step up. Your state is I don't know if most people know this, but when the Declaration of Independence was written, in the last paragraph, the colonies in 2 sentences became free and independent states. I don't mean bastions, I don't mean, little fiefdoms. I mean, when they use the term state, they were thinking like Germany, France, or England. Okay.
Right.
Your state, believe it or not, is a free and independent nation in a confederation of states. And so there is so much I have to share and so much I could share. And we're just going to have to come.
This is heartbreaking.
We're just going to have to. We're just going to have to get back together. Okay.
Oh, I would welcome that. I would like that. I would like to not necessarily. I don't want to use the form collaborate, but I would love to help you do that presentation. Get it, maybe record it, and get that recording out there with you and for you. No doubt about it.
Okay.
I think everyone has enjoyed your time here, most definitely. and I thank you.
Mhm.
And all good things, as they say, must come to an end.
Okay, well, Vincent, one, thank you for having me, and I want to thank your audience as well. I've read some of the comments. I couldn't respond to them as quickly as I wanted to, but we're probably going to have to get back together, okay?
Oh, most definitely at this point. Yes, sir. I believe I think you and I both have the same, because a few people that I've spoken to about you, I said, I think my attraction to you, where I'm magnetized to you, where I feel kind of very connected to you, is the teaching part.
Hmm.
The teaching part and the counseling part to help, because we both have hearts. We love your son, Noah.
Thank you. That was unexpected.
You know what? Awesome. Loved it. And I mean that. Loved the
Okay.
moment. Thank you. Um, but no, I think we both have that passion of what we know to do right. And we want
Hmm.
to teach people of how to go about getting it. And of course, in what we say, we try to do,
Hmm.
because we know our actions are stronger than our words, which again is why, folks, I'm thinking about running for governor. February 26th, I'm going to try and get my name on a ballot somewhere. But seriously, Paul, I would love to have you come back and anytime, and work with you, sir. Thank you for your time.
Okay, let's figure it out, and thank you.
And you know what? I'm hoping that you'll find where you're wanting to go in path of service to the people, because I know you want to still do it. I know you
Oh,
do.
oh, I'm
So,
doing it now. Well, what I'm doing is teaching and promoting full compliance to the Constitution. So thank you. Thanks for having me, and we look forward to sharing this fight together. How's that?
yes, yes, sir. Thank you so very much. Have a
Okay.
blessed day.
All right.
I've got to tell you, folks, it's an amazing situation. I meet the most remarkable people, and I just know in my heart of hearts, I have a feeling we're making a great connection, Paul and I. And I do intend and pray and hope that this is only going to grow. And I've got Lee Spiller coming back next week. And you've all maybe watched his program, got to see his program. But the people that I'm involved with, or the people that I'm blessed to have here with me, are people that really care about you. Maybe not you, Robert, and you, John, and you, Mary, and Sue, but they care about the people that are in their lives, and about the people that are around them in their lives, and they're protective. They're wanting to protect and really just care and serve. And I feel so blessed with the logbook, with everything that Kimberly and Dakota are doing. Um, Common Denominator Network is just a grouping of a lot of different podcasts. And who knows, maybe I might be able to get Paul to actually come on. Believe it or not, it would be wonderful to think. The great one, Mark Levin. I mean, in my heart, I would love to see Paul come on, maybe have his own show about maybe just the Constitution only, and go through it and go through it and go through it more. Because, folks, there's a reason, a season, and a lifetime. Great poem, by the way. You should look that one up. But right now, we're at the moment. And if you heard what Paul said, we have to stop being on the defense. We've got to go more on the offense. Not that we are going to start doing things that are violent and wrong. You just fight fire with fire. You play them with their game and at their game. And right now, the game to me is the Constitution. And we, the people, have it in our power. There's a citizen's rule book you can look up online. It's a great book. It will help you. Go out and get your U.S. Constitution and the facts about it within. Just these little books, and just pick a moment. And you have to do some reflecting. You have to do some thought and think about these things. Because I'm going to tell you right now, if we don't get on the ball, yesterday, tomorrow, we may not have that beginning available or that start available, such as with the quote I had today. And I mean, there's a reason. Nobody can go back and start a beginning, but anyone can start today and make a new ending. And that, I think, is what we are capable of doing, each and every one of us. We can just start today and make a new ending. And not necessarily an ending that comes to the ending and they live happily ever after, but we've got to make an ending to the tyranny. We've got to make an ending to our rights being trampled and stopped on. We've got a petition. We do have a right to assemble. But you know what? That is something he brought up also that fascinated me. The right to protest? Wait a second. I don't think so. I think when I listened back and I listened to Nancy Pelosi say, kick them hard, or Maxine Waters say, you get in their face, you're infringing on people's privacy. Rand Paul, when he had a broken arm by someone who hit him. I mean, you can't assault your political leaders. You can't assault people that have a different mindset than you. You can't start fights. You can't provoke people and get them so angry that they feel the need to protect themselves. Of course, sometimes I tell those people like myself, walk away. Sometimes it's bigger to just walk away. You may not have won that battle, but you will win the war. And right now, believe it or not, I think Paul said it, kind of under the radar, but we're in a war right now. We're in a war of good over evil. And that's all it comes down to, good over evil. And opened up with Oliver Anthony. Can't say more. Every one of you know about him. That's all I can say. But I think I'm going to end the show, of course, with let me go here and stop this before it does go nuts on me. There we go. I almost mucked up. End this show with one that I just came across totally by accident. And I think you're going to like this because it's what Paul was indicating about our cities, even in Boise. It was just amazing. But here we go.
They've torn Portland all to pieces and let Chicago go to hell. There's people leaving New York City like they rang the fire bell. They call themselves enlightened. Cancel those who don't agree. I wish all these folks who claim they're woke would just go back to sleep. I'm just saying, have we all lost our minds? I'm just saying, where do we draw the line? I know y'all think it takes balls to be singing what I'm singing, but I'm just saying what you're thinking. I believe in live and live. We're all free to each their own. If you were born a he, but wanna be a she, do your thing, but leave my kids alone. I'm just saying, have we all lost our minds? I'm just saying, where do we draw the line? I know y'all think it takes balls to be singing what I'm singing, but I'm just saying what you're thinking. We send them off to college to get them educated. They send them back to us indoctrinated. And how much are we paying? I'm just saying. Have we all lost our minds? I'm just saying. Where do we draw the line? No offense, but common sense. The direction that I'm leaning. Some of y'all think it takes balls to be singing what I'm singing, but I'm just saying what you're thinking. Yeah, what you're thinking.
Here we go, unmute myself. Well, folks, from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much for joining me. I look forward to this friendship, I'm going to say it as such, with Paul, Mr. Venable, to grow. I hope that you'll reach out and help him. Reach out and talk to him. All the folks who I've had on these programs past couple months have been very good men and women. There's always an email address, website for some to reach out to them. But, you know, I just feel as though I'm just one lucky guy. So, voraciously from the bottom of my heart, Russell, we'll get you next week back, and you can close out our show. Thank you very much, and we'll talk to you soon. In fact, I'm going to let Russell. Yeah, I think I'm going to let Russell do it anyway. Here we go.
The song is for all Americans. I just wrote this last night. Well, some say I'm troubled, some say I'm extreme. 'Cause I love this country and the American dream. And I'll let no politician tell me what to do. Yeah, I was raised country with work on my hands. Well, you respect your neighbor and you respect the land. And I'll let no president tell me what to do. 'Cause my blood runs red, white, and blue. Yeah, my blood runs red, white, and blue. Yeah, Daddy taught me right from wrong. When to be humble and when to be strong. And I'll fight for freedom if that's what I must do. 'Cause my blood runs red, white, and blue. Now Papa's passed while I was off to war. And this country's changing, it ain't the same anymore. But I'll fight for freedom, yes, I'll fight for you. 'Cause my blood runs red, white, and blue. Hope you like it. Keep the faith, brothers. Stand strong. Fight for freedom.